unlimited drama series.
The champagne flute in my hand cost more than I made in a day, and everyone at this wedding knew it. My name is Jake Morrison, and I was sitting behind a marble pillar at the Riverside Country Club, watching my wife Jessica laugh at her boss's jokes like he was the funniest man alive. "More wine, sir." The waiter didn't even look at me when he asked. His eyes were already scanning for someone more important. "Sure, kid, keep it coming." Jessica caught my eye from across the ballroom and gave me that smile, the one that used to mean something before she started working at Hartwell and Associates. Now it just meant behave yourself and don't embarrass me. Her sister Miranda's wedding was the social event of the season, according to the local paper. 300 guests, ice sculptures, and a 12-piece orchestra. I owned a small construction company and wore my only good suit, which I bought 5 years ago for our own wedding. "Jake, right?" A woman slid into the empty chair beside me. Mid-30s, dark hair, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my truck payment. "I'm Nina." "Yeah, that's me, the guy behind the pillar." She laughed, genuine, not the polite society chuckle I'd been hearing all evening. "Miranda's family really knows how to make people feel welcome, don't they? About as welcome as a skunk at a garden party." I took another sip of wine. "You a friend of the bride?" "Something like that." Nina reached into her purse and pulled out a small device, about the size of a garage door opener. "I need you to do me a favor, Jake. When I give you the signal, press this button." "What is it?" "Insurance." Her eyes were fixed on the head table where Jessica was leaning close to Colin Hartwell, her boss and law firm partner. Too close. "Your wife looks happy, thrilled." The sarcasm dripped from my voice like honey from a broken jar. "She's been working late a lot lately. Big cases," she says. "I bet." Nina stood up, smoothing down her dress. "Remember, Jake, when I nod, press the button." Before I could ask what the hell she was talking about, Nina was walking toward the front of the room. She moved with purpose, like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. The kind of confidence Jessica used to have before she started caring more about what other people thought. "Excuse me, everyone." Nina's voice cut through the chatter like a knife through butter. "I have a special presentation for the happy couple." Miranda beamed from the head table, probably thinking this was some surprise her mother had arranged. The lights dimmed, and a projection screen descended from the ceiling. Nina caught my eye and nodded. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, showing what looked like security camera footage from the law firm's conference room. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the night Jessica said she was working on the Henderson case. But she wasn't working on any case. She was working on Colin Hartwell, her hands tangled in his hair while he pressed her against the conference table. The room erupted. Miranda screamed. Jessica's face went white as fresh snow. Colin tried to stand up so fast he knocked over his chair and 3 wine glasses. But the video kept playing, showing my wife of 8 years doing things with her boss that she hadn't done with me in months. "Turn it off!" Jessica shrieked, lunging toward the projection equipment. But her heel caught in her dress, and she went down hard, taking the centerpiece and half the head table with her. Flowers, candles, and expensive china crashed to the floor in a symphony of destruction. I stood up, straightened my tie, and walked over to where Jessica was struggling to get up from the wreckage. "Great party, honey. Really brings people together." "Jake, I can explain. Save it for your lawyer." "Oh wait, you already did." I grabbed a bottle of champagne from the nearest table and headed for the exit. "Thanks for the show, everyone. Don't forget to tip your waiters." The last thing I heard before the doors closed behind me was Miranda crying and her new husband asking if they could get their deposit back. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Jessica, of course. I let it go to voicemail while I made coffee in the kitchen of our suburban split level. The house we bought 3 years ago when business was good and I thought we were building something together. "Jake, pick up the damn phone." Jessica's voice echoed through the empty house. She'd stayed at her sister's last night, probably getting an earful from the whole family. "We need to talk." The coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but it was strong enough to wake the dead. I needed that today. My phone buzzed with text messages, 17 of them, all from Jessica. The last one made me laugh out loud. "You've ruined everything. How could you do this to me? How could I do this to her?" That was rich. The doorbell rang at 7:30. I opened it to find Frank Kowalski, my old wrestling coach from high school and current workout partner. Frank was 65, built like a fire hydrant. and had the kind of wisdom that only came from watching people make the same mistakes for 40 years. Heard you caused quite a stir last night, he said, pushing past me into the kitchen. Coffee smells terrible. It's not about the taste, Frank. It's about the caffeine. Smart man. He poured himself a cup and grimaced. So, you want to tell me what really happened? Or should I just go with the version that's all over Facebook? It's all over Facebook already? Kid, half the wedding was live streaming on Instagram. Your wife's little tumble is going viral as we speak. Frank sat down at my kitchen table like he owned the place. Question is, what are you going to do now? I don't know. I slumped into the chair across from him. 8 years, Frank. 8 years I've been married to that woman. Worked my ass off to build this business, bought this house, supported her through law school, and this is what I get. Life ain't fair, Jake. You know that. But feeling sorry for yourself ain't gonna fix anything. Frank leaned forward, his eyes serious. You got 2 choices here. You can roll over and let them destroy you, or you can fight back. But if you're gonna fight, you better fight smart. What do you mean? I mean your wife's a lawyer, son. She knows how to work the system. You're gonna need to be smarter than her if you want to come out of this with your skin intact. My phone rang again. This time it was my daughter Maddie, calling from college. I almost didn't answer, but Frank nodded toward the phone. Dad? Maddie's voice was small, uncertain. I saw the videos online. Is it true? Which part, sweetheart? All of it. Mom and her boss, the wedding, everything. She paused, and I could hear her roommate talking in the background. Everyone's sharing it. It's everywhere. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Maddie. I really am. Are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I don't know yet, honey. We haven't talked about it. Good. Her voice got stronger, more determined. Because I think you should take her for everything she's worth. After I hung up, Frank was grinning like a cat who'd caught a canary. Smart kid. She gets that from her mother. The irony wasn't lost on me. So what's it gonna be, Jake? You gonna fight or you gonna fold? I looked around the kitchen, at the coffee maker Jessica bought because it matched the curtains, at the table we picked out together, at the life we'd built that was now crumbling around me like a house of cards in a hurricane. I'm gonna fight. Good. Frank stood up and dumped his coffee in the sink. Then we better get started. First thing you need to do is find out who that woman was last night. The one with the remote. Nina. Yeah, Nina. Because nobody just happens to have security footage from a law firm, Jake. Somebody wanted you to see what your wife was doing, and I'm betting they've got more where that came from. He was right, of course. Frank was always right about these things. The question was, why would a stranger want to help me? And what did she want in return? My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. Coming home at noon. We're going to settle this like adults. I showed the message to Frank, who snorted with laughter. Adults, huh? Well, this should be interesting. Jessica walked into our house at exactly noon, wearing her power suit and the expression she usually reserved for hostile witnesses. Behind her came her sister Miranda, still in wedding recovery mode, and their mother, Eleanor, who had never liked me and made no effort to hide it. We need to talk, Jessica announced, like she was opening a deposition. Sure, coffee's fresh. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, forcing them to come to me. Small victories. This isn't a social visit, Jake. Eleanor's voice could freeze water in July. You humiliated this entire family last night. Funny, I thought Jessica did that all by herself. Miranda started crying again. She'd been doing a lot of that since her wedding turned into a reality TV show. How could you do that to me, Jake? It was my special day. Your special day. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 6'2". Your sister was screwing her boss, and you're mad at me for exposing it? You could have handled it privately, Jessica said, slipping into her lawyer voice. Instead, you chose to destroy my reputation and humiliate my family. Your reputation. The laugh that came out of me was bitter as black coffee. Jessica, you destroyed your own reputation when you decided to play horizontal lawyer with Colin Hartwell. Eleanor stepped forward, Her finger pointed at my chest like a weapon. Don't you dare speak to my daughter that way, you worthless piece of mill. Careful, Eleanor. My voice dropped to a whisper. You're in my house now. The room went quiet. Even Miranda stopped sniffling. Jessica cleared her throat. I've spoken with a divorce attorney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Let me guess. The easy way involves me giving you everything and disappearing quietly. The easy way involves a fair division of assets and joint custody of Maddie. Jessica pulled a folder from her briefcase. I'm prepared to be reasonable. I flipped through the papers. According to Jessica's idea of reasonable, she got the house, half my business, alimony and primary custody of our daughter. I got to keep my truck and the privilege of paying for everything. This is your idea of fair? You embarrassed me in front of 300 people, Jake. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges. Charges for what? Showing people a video of what you actually did? For invasion of privacy? For intentional infliction of emotional distress? For making you face the consequences of your actions? I tossed the papers back at her. Here's my counteroffer. Go to hell. Olio gasped. Miranda started crying harder. Jessica's face turned red. You're making a mistake, Jake. I'm trying to be nice here, but I don't have to be. I know things about your business, about your finances. I can make your life very difficult. More difficult than finding out my wife's been cheating on me. I doubt it. Fine. Jessica snapped her briefcase shut. We'll do this the hard way. You'll be hearing from my attorney. They left in a flurry of threats and tears, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat back down at the kitchen table and called Frank. How'd it go? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. She wants everything, and she's threatening to destroy me if I don't cooperate. Sounds about right. You ready for phase 2? What's phase 2? Finding out who your friends really are. He was right, of course. By evening, my phone was ringing off the hook. Some calls were from people offering support, mostly guys from the gym, and a few clients who'd heard about the wedding incident. But most of the calls were different. Jake, it's Tom Bradley. Tom owned the hardware store where I bought most of my supplies. We'd been friends for 10 years, grabbed beers together, talked about business and life. Listen, man, I heard about what happened with Jessica. Yeah, it's been a hell of a day. Look, I hate to do this, but Eleanor called me this afternoon. She's got a lot of influence in this town, and Jessica's family has been good customers for years. I think maybe we should take a break from our business relationship, just until things cool down. The line went dead. Tom Bradley, who'd laughed at my jokes and borrowed my tools and called me his friend, had just cut me loose because Eleanor made a phone call. The next call was worse. Bill Morrison, no relation despite the name, had been my best man at my wedding. We'd known each other since high school, started our businesses around the same time, even vacationed together. Jake, I'm sorry, but I can't be associated with this mess. Sarah's friends with Jessica, and the whole thing is just too complicated. Maybe in a few months, when everything settles down. By 9 o'clock, I'd lost 3 major clients, 2 suppliers, and 4 friends I thought I could count on. The message was clear. Jessica and her family had connections, influence, and the ability to make my life hell if I didn't play along. I was pouring myself a whiskey when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Nina, the mysterious woman from the wedding, standing on my porch with a bottle of wine and a manila envelope. Rough day? She asked. You could say that. Come on in. She followed me into the living room, looking around like she was appraising the place. Nice house, very suburban. Jessica picked out most of the furniture. I gestured to the couch. Can I ask who you are and why you helped me last night? Nina sat down and crossed her legs. I'm a private investigator. I was hired to document your wife's affair. By who? That's confidential. But let's just say someone wanted you to know the truth. She handed me the envelope. There's more where that came from. Inside were photographs, hotel receipts, credit card statements, and phone records. Jessica and Colin's affair had been going on for 6 months, and they hadn't been careful about covering their tracks. Why are you giving me this? Because you're going to need it. Nina poured herself a glass of wine without being asked. Jessica's already filed for divorce. She's claiming you're emotionally abusive and unstable. She wants a restraining order. That's bullshit. Of course it is. But she's got witnesses who'll testify that you have a violent temper and that you threatened her family. What witnesses? Eleanor, Miranda, and Colin Hartwell. They're painting you as a dangerous man who destroyed a wedding out of spite and jealousy. I felt the walls closing in. Jessica was playing chess while I was playing checkers. and she was already 3 moves ahead. So what do I do? Nina smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely screwed. We fight back. Nina's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant. Not exactly the kind of place you'd expect to find a private investigator, but then again, nothing about this situation was what I'd expected. First rule of warfare, Nina said, spreading photos across her desk. Know your enemy. Mine. The photos showed Jessica and Colin at restaurants, hotels, and even my own house while I was at work. They'd been bold, careless, and stupid. But they'd also been thorough in covering their legal tracks. Colin Hartwell's been planning this for months, Nina continued. He's not just sleeping with your wife, Jake. He's positioning himself to take over her life completely. What do you mean? I mean, he's been feeding her information about divorce law.
Your intern filed this, then withdrew it. What did you promise her?
It was consensual.
He's 23 years old!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Helping her move assets around, setting up the narrative that you're an unstable husband who can't handle his wife's success. Nina pulled out a stack of financial documents. Look at this. The papers showed a series of transfers from our joint accounts to a new account in Jessica's name only. $50,000, moved over the past 3 months in amounts small enough to avoid triggering automatic notifications. She's been stealing from me. Technically, it's marital property, so it's not theft, but it shows premeditation. She's been planning to leave you for months, Jake. The wedding incident just gave her an excuse to play the victim. I studied the photos, feeling my anger build like pressure in a boiler. Jessica laughing with Colin at expensive restaurants, while I ate leftover pizza at home. Jessica in hotel rooms I couldn't afford while I worked 16-hour days to pay the mortgage. Jessica building a new life while systematically destroying mine. There's more, Nina said, pulling out another folder. Colin's wife filed for divorce last week. Turns out your wife isn't his first affair. His wife knows? Margaret Hartwell knows everything. She hired me 6 months ago when she suspected Colin was cheating. She just didn't know it was with your wife until recently. Nina leaned back in her chair. She's the one who wanted you to see that video. Why? Because misery loves company, and Margaret Hartwell is very, very miserable. Her husband's been cheating on her for years, but she never had proof. Now she does, and she wants to make sure Colin pays for it. So I'm just a pawn in her revenge scheme? We're all pawns, Jake. The question is whether you want to be a pawn or a player. Nina was right. I'd been reacting to Jessica's moves instead of making my own. Time to change that. What do you need from me? Access to your house, your business records, and your wife's computer if possible. If we're going to prove she's been planning this, we need evidence of premeditation. She changed all the passwords on her laptop. That's okay. I have other ways. Over the next week, Nina and I worked together to build our case. She was thorough, professional, and surprisingly good company. We spent long hours going through financial records, phone bills, and credit card statements, piecing together the timeline of Jessica's betrayal. She's been sloppy, Nina observed, highlighting another suspicious transaction. Lawyers always think they're smarter than everyone else, but they make the same mistakes as everyone else. Jessica's always been arrogant. She thinks she's the smartest person in any room. Pride goeth before the fall. Nina looked up from the papers. Speaking of which, how are you holding up? This can't be easy. I've been better. That was an understatement. I'd barely slept in a week. I'd lost 15 pounds, and I was drinking too much. But I was also more focused than I'd been in years. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she started picking fights over nothing. Don't do that to yourself. Cheaters are good at hiding their tracks, especially when they're lawyers. Yeah, well, this lawyer made some mistakes. We found them over the next few days. Email exchanges between Jessica and Colin discussing their exit strategy, text messages about hotel reservations and weekend trips, credit card receipts for expensive dinners and gifts, a paper trail that showed Jessica had been living a double life for months, but the smoking gun came from an unexpected source, my daughter Maddie. Dad, I found something on Mom's iPad, she said during one of our nightly phone calls. She left it logged into her email when she visited me at school last month. What kind of something? Emails between her and Colin, and between her and some divorce attorney. Dad, they've been planning this since Christmas. While I was buying Jessica expensive jewelry and planning a romantic vacation, she was planning to leave me. Can you forward me those emails, sweetheart? Already did. Check your inbox. The emails were devastating. Jessica and Colin discussing how to manage me during the divorce. Jessica and her attorney strategizing about how to maximize her settlement. Most damning of all, an email from Jessica to Colin dated 2 weeks before the wedding. After Miranda's wedding, we'll have the perfect opportunity to make Jake look unstable. One public incident, and I can get everything I want in the divorce. They'd planned it. The whole thing was a setup, designed to make me look like the bad guy while Jessica played the innocent victim. This changes everything, Nina said when I showed her the emails. This proves malicious intent. Your wife wasn't just cheating. She was actively working to destroy your reputation and steal your assets. What do we do with it? We use it to destroy her first. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Jessica wanted to play victim. We'd give her something to really cry about. Nina had connections throughout the legal community. Other private investigators, process servers, court reporters, and paralegals who knew where all the bodies were buried. Within a week, word was spreading through the local bar association that Jessica Morrison was having an affair with her married boss and had been caught on video. Lawyers love gossip more than anyone, Nina explained as we sat in her car outside the courthouse. And they hate being embarrassed. Jessica's reputation is about to take a serious hit. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning. Margaret Hartwell filed for divorce, citing adultery and requesting half of Colin's assets, including his partnership in the law firm. She also filed a civil suit against Jessica for alienation of affection, a rarely used law that allowed spouses to sue their partner's lover for damages. The second domino fell that afternoon. The managing partners at Hartwell and Associates called an emergency meeting and suspended both Colin and Jessica, pending an internal investigation. Apparently, having affairs with married colleagues was bad for the firm's reputation. The third domino was the most satisfying. Eleanor, Jessica's mother and self-appointed queen of local society, was quietly asked to step down from the hospital board after several major donors expressed concern about her family's moral character. How does it feel? Nina asked as we watched Jessica storm out of her law firm's offices, carrying a box of personal belongings. Like Christmas morning, I admitted. But Jessica wasn't going down without a fight. She escalated her legal attack, filing for an emergency restraining order and claiming I was stalking and harassing her. She had witnesses, Colin, Eleanor, and Miranda, who testified that I'd made threatening phone calls and driven past her sister's house where she was staying. The problem was, I had alibis for every incident she claimed. Nina had made sure of that, keeping detailed records of my whereabouts, and even providing security camera footage that contradicted Jessica's timeline. Your wife's getting desperate, Nina observed as we left the courthouse after the restraining order was denied. Desperate people make mistakes. Jessica, apparently convinced that she could salvage her relationship with Colin, met him at the same hotel where they'd been conducting their affair. What she didn't know was that Colin was wearing a wire, courtesy of his wife's attorney. Jessica admitting that she'd lied about the threatening phone calls. Jessica discussing how to hide assets from the divorce court. Jessica calling me a pathetic loser who deserved everything he got. But the best part was when Colin told her he was ending their relationship and going back to his wife to try to save his marriage. Jessica's response was a profanity-laced tirade that would have made a sailor blush, followed by physical violence that resulted in hotel security being called. She hit him with a lamp, Nina reported, barely containing her laughter. Hotel security has it all on video. Colin's pressing charges for assault. You're kidding. I never kid about assault charges. Your wife is looking at criminal prosecution, a civil lawsuit from Margaret Hartwell, and complete professional ruin. Oh, and Colin's wife is releasing the hotel recordings to the media. The media? Margaret Hartwell has friends at the local news station. This story's going to be everywhere by tomorrow night. I should have felt sorry for Jessica. We'd been married for 8 years, and despite everything, I'd loved her once. But watching her world crumble felt like justice. She'd tried to destroy my life, my business, and my reputation. Now she was getting a taste of her own medicine. The news story aired on Thursday evening. Local attorney caught in affair scandal was the headline, accompanied by footage of Jessica being escorted out of her law firm and photos of her with Colin at various hotels. The reporter interviewed several unnamed sources who described Jessica as manipulative dishonest, and willing to do anything to get ahead. My phone started ringing immediately. Tom Bradley from the hardware store, apologizing and asking if we could work something out. Bill Morrison, my former best man, wanting to grab a beer and catch up. 3 clients who'd dropped me after the wedding incident, suddenly interested in new projects. Fair weather friends, Frank observed when I told him about the calls. You're better off without them. Maybe, but it's nice to know who's really in my corner. Speaking of which, what's the story with you and Nina? You two seem pretty close. I'd been wondering the same thing. Nina and I had been spending a lot of time together, and somewhere between investigating my wife's betrayal and planning our counterattack, I'd started looking forward to seeing her. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly honest after months of Jessica's lies. She's helping me through the divorce. Uh-huh. Frank's grin suggested he wasn't buying my casual tone. And after the divorce? I haven't thought that far ahead. Maybe you should. He was right, of course. But first I had to finish what Jessica had started. The divorce proceedings were scheduled to begin the following week, and I wanted to make sure I was ready for whatever she threw at me. As it turned out, Jessica had one more card to play, and it was a doozy. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in Judge Patricia Coleman's courtroom. Jessica showed up with a new attorney, a shark named David Brennan, who specialized in high-conflict divorces and had a reputation for destroying opposing parties. Mr. Morrison, Brennan began during his opening statement, is a violent, unstable man who has systematically harassed and intimidated my client. He invaded her privacy, destroyed her career, and threatened her family. We're asking for full custody of the minor child, the marital home, spousal support, and damages for the emotional distress he's caused. My attorney, Sarah Chen, recommended by Nina and paid for with money I'd managed to hide from Jessica's asset grab, stood up with a folder full of evidence. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison is the victim here, not the perpetrator. We have evidence that Mrs. Morrison engaged in a systematic campaign to defraud her husband, steal marital assets, and destroy his reputation while conducting an affair with her married boss. What followed was 3 hours of legal warfare. Brennan painted me as a jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. Sarah presented our evidence. The emails, the financial records, the hotel receipts, and the recordings of Jessica admitting she'd lied about my supposed threats. The turning point came when Sarah called Margaret Hartwell as a witness. Margaret, impeccably dressed and radiating the kind of quiet dignity that comes from surviving betrayal, testified about her husband's affair with Jessica and the recording of Jessica's violent outburst at the hotel. Mrs. Morrison struck my husband with a lamp when he attempted to end their relationship, Margaret said calmly. She also made several threats against both him and me, which I reported to the police. Brennan tried to object, but Judge Coleman was having none of it. The evidence was overwhelming, and Jessica's credibility was shot. But Jessica had one last desperate move. During a recess, she approached me in the hallway, with tears in her eyes and her voice shaking. Jake, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Think about Maddie. Think about our family. Our family? I looked at the woman I'd been married to for 8 years, and I felt nothing but pity. You destroyed our family, Jessica. You did that, not me. I'll give up everything. The house, the money, all of it. Just don't let them destroy me completely. You should have thought of that before you decided to screw your boss and steal my money. Jake, please. No. I walked away, leaving her standing in the courthouse hallway with mascara running down her cheeks. Judge Coleman's ruling was swift and decisive. I got the house. My business remained mine alone. And Jessica was ordered to pay back the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts. Custody of Maddie would be joint, but she'd chosen to live with me anyway. Jessica got her car, her personal belongings, and the privilege of starting over from scratch. Furthermore, Judge Coleman added, I'm ordering Mrs. Morrison to pay Mr. Morrison's legal fees, given the frivolous nature of many of her claims and the evidence of financial misconduct. Jessica's face went white. Brennan whispered something in her ear, but she just shook her head numbly. Outside the courthouse, Nina was waiting with a bottle of champagne and a smile that could light up Times Square. How does it feel to be a free man? She asked. Like I can breathe again. I looked back at the courthouse where Jessica was probably still trying to process what had just happened. She got exactly what she deserved. And what do you deserve? I thought about that for a moment. For the past 6 months, I'd been focused on revenge, on making Jessica pay for what she'd done to me. But now that it was over, I realized what I really wanted, a fresh start. I might be able to help with that. Nina moved closer, and I caught a hint of her perfume. If you're interested, very interested, we drove back to my house. My house now, not ours, and opened the champagne on the back deck, overlooking the yard where Jessica had planted roses that never bloomed. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. So what's next? Nina asked, curled up beside me on the porch swing. Well, I've got a business to rebuild, a relationship with my daughter to repair, and a life to figure out. I looked at her, this woman who'd appeared out of nowhere and helped me reclaim my dignity. Think you might want to be part of that. I thought you'd never ask. My phone buzzed with a text from Maddie. Dad, saw the news about the divorce. I'm proud of you. Can't wait to come home for dinner Sunday. Love you. I showed the message to Nina, who smiled and raised her champagne glass. To new beginnings, she said. To getting what we deserve, I replied. We clinked glasses as the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky orange and pink. Jessica was probably packing her belongings and trying to figure out how to rebuild her shattered life. Colin was facing his own divorce and